Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the podcast, the long awaited actually podcast. This came after the demands that been requested by some of my friends actually who are watching the podcast, and some of the viewers. It's only one viewer actually internationally who actually requested for the podcast to resume, and I've been quite busy for the previous period. I've just moved to a new job, and it's a bit demanding, and I was trying to kind of settle down, get my things together, and then go back to do what we do best. Trying to do best, and that is to discuss several topics or certain topics that I find interesting and I find very much intriguing. Some of them that they kind of tick me because some of these project what do you call it topics, sorry, they kind of tend to contradict themselves, or the people who talk about these topics, they contradict themselves, or they're basically there is a certain amount of absurdity in these topics, and that reflects in the topic that we're going to address today, which is the sports. I even got it written so that trying to get structure a little bit. So gender identity and sport, that's the topic. And earlier this day, I was basically out with a friend of mine, and we've been going, what do you call it, back and forth, trying to get some things sorted out. And during our, what do you call it, car ride, we've been talking about a certain topic that we both find interesting, and it's been going a lot in the internet and in the mainstream media, and been discussed, been debated, and it's a very, very political kind of topic, and very sensitive topic, because there is more than two sides to this story, and that makes it very difficult to discuss, and very difficult to come up with a certain opinion that you would be very much neutral. So as I go, as I move forward and talk about the what it is basically gender identity, and what does it have to do with sports. Bear in mind, this is mainly an opinion, and yes, backed up by several what do you call it, publications, whether it's scientific or whether it's just spoken by some people who are basically involved in the sports itself. So I've been going through a lot of debates, mainly if you watch Joe Rogan Experience podcast. There was this one dude, I believe his name is Adam Convor, something like this. Very interesting fella. It's Adam Conover. He's an American comedian, writer, and television host, and a creator of a host of half an hour true TV show called Adam Ruins Everything. And he was a guest at the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and this guy basically, he did ruin everything on that podcast, because that podcast was sweet. I like how Joe Rogan handled it, because the point that this guy Adam Conver was making are kind of they're very much absurd. So the problem was with gender identity and sports. We do understand. I mean, probably in my country this doesn't exist, thank God. But in certain countries around the world, you have your fellow men, you have your fellow women, and you have your the transgender community, where if you're a man and you feel like you want to be identified as a woman, you can just say that. If you're a man, if you're a woman, you want to be identified as a man, you can also say that. I mean, from where I come from, this is very interesting, because this doesn't exist, because you've been raised and as civilization as we know it, that there's only two genders, and this is me speaking historically, and that is man and woman. and both need each other, of course, for productive reproduction and for the sustainability of the human race. Because both of these genders, they have their own characteristics and stuff. So I don't basically know the history. Where did this started? Where people started to feel like they don't feel like themselves, or they don't feel, men saying that they don't feel like they're men, and women saying they don't feel like they're women, and each of these genders are trying to kind of make something or like do something about it. And it's not until like recently, I can't actually give a specific year. Maybe it started in the 1900s, maybe it started in the 1800s. But recently, I'm talking from the perspective of the new man civilization. The advancement of the human technology, and men or human being more advanced than the caveman, let's say. And it's not until recently, perhaps this has been going on for a long time, but it wasn't communicated in the media, because now in the social media and the mainstream media, you can basically go and just research these topics, and you will find hundreds and countless of debates about this as being a something that is now addressed and acknowledged, that each individual, they have these certain freedoms where they can address themselves as they should, or as they wish. And it started by when the gay community came in, that gays it's genetic, and it's not choice, and all of that all of these conversations. Now that's not the topic to debate that. But when these started, I believe it started, or as I was following, it started with basically some individuals, some men, for example. They identify themselves that they're not attracted to men, and they we just feel like we're we don't want to do men stuff. We just want to do something else. So a lot of confusion. Like it's very interesting to talk about this topic, because you have to be very subjective, and you have to have an open mind to it, to the conversation, because now the sensitivity of the community is becoming very tense. You cannot even say anything. Well, everyone feels attacked. So we're trying to keep an open mind, whether some individual, whether it's a man or a woman, identifying themselves as the opposite sex. Now, when it started, before it gets involved with the sports, it was okay, no problem. People felt like you can do that if it makes you happy, and everyone should be happy. If you are happy to identify yourself as a woman, and you're a man, you were born a man biologically. You do that as long as your basically space does not affect other people. So it's funny. It's funny to me, because there have been a lot of examples where this got out of control. So how did it get involved with sports? That's the interesting part of it. So there was a lot of celebrities, let's say, maybe pro athletes who used to be involved in sports. They had a whole career, they had families and everything. And, at the age of almost 50, they decided that they feel like a woman, they don't feel like a man. And perhaps you probably know who I'm talking about. I think that was the breaking point where this became a very worldwide kind of conversation, and everyone is just jumping into it, and people starting to kind of come out and saying that I'm a man biologically, but I feel like a woman, and women saying, or a woman biologically, but I feel like a man. And once that breaking point started from one of the pro athletes that done that transition, a lot of issues and conflicts and debates basically arises from that. One of them is that now we know that in the Olympics, for example, or in sports in general, you have the men's sports and you have the women's sports. So let's say, for example, if there is a competition for soccer, football, that's how what should be called. So if there is a competition in football, for example, you have the men's team who they compete with each other, and they have their teams are fully formulated from men, and it's a fair game. It's been going on for like forever, and no one complained. And you have also the women's sport who also happen to be in the football, what do you call it, the football sports. You have football tournaments, you have football World Cup for women, and everything is cool. And then you have the individual ones, or like when a single person basically participates in a certain sport, say for example for the MMA sport. And that's where things started to get tricky. So recently, like for the past 5 years, there have been a lot of instances where men, biological men, grew up to be men and lived up to be men, and at a certain point of time, they decided that they want to be identified as women, even though they're keeping their biological men organs, and everyone supported them, and each individual are free to basically give or support whomever they want to support. So what happened is these men now being identified as a woman find it that they have the right to participate in sports, in women's sports. So let's say, for example, you have we do both understand, me and you, we understand that biologically men are more superior than women. That's like, there is no debate. It's been proven, there've been, you don't even need to prove it. Like, that is like a common knowledge that men are superior to women when it comes to physical strength. So when you have a guy who's like 6'2" or something, phenomenon, body built, and identify themselves as a woman and goes and try to compete in the MMA, of course you're gonna have winners. That's like a given. You don't even need to have skills, because physical strength usually, like, you can just dominate that. And this actually happened, and it's been talked about by by Joe Rogan with his host. And you try to keep an open mind about this topic, but it's just absurd. It just doesn't make any sense, because there have been a lot of even trolls. I call them trolls because it's really absurd, who find this as an opportunity to kind of get some financial gain. So you have individuals who claim, or who wake up one day and they say, I'd like to be identified as a woman, and then they just go and break some record. And I believe there was this story, it was talked about, I think, in what podcast I was listening to, can't really remember, of this individual. He's not even like well built and stuff, who woke up one day and he was like, you know what, I identify myself as a woman. And he went to the gym, and he broke the record of the weight lifted by a woman. So technically now that guy or that woman now holds the world's record for bench presses, or whatever they call it. And he could have just easily said, I don't know if he did that, but if he did it, that would have been sick. Like the next day, he can just wake up and say, I identify myself as a woman. And the absurdity about it is that he will find the support from people. Like, you'll have the bullies, of course, who's going to say this guy is fake and stuff. But that's going to be considered a hate crime, because you don't know what's inside people's, minds or lives. So you cannot just judge people. If people, felt that they're confused about their gender, if people felt that they're not sure about their identity, these people usually, they tend to need help. So regardless of how smart an individual is, or how known or how famous, if someone just wakes up one day and is like, he or she is like, oh, I feel like I'm a different gender inside, so I'd like to be identified as that gender. and now everyone has to basically just treat them the way that these individuals feels, and that's where the issue starts, because now this creates a lot of confusion. There've been one video actually I've been watching about this guy. He's like six, I don't know, 6'4" something. He looks like a wrestler. Sorry. So this guy sorry. This woman or man. This is a confusion that's been going on. So this man, who's biological man, who's a woman, he was in this store. So he was like, or she was in this store. He was like trying to make a purchase, and the guy who's in the counter is like, "Sir," when he called him sir, he was like, "What? How dare you call me sir? You should call me ma'am. I'm a ma'am. It's not sir." And this guy is just big, and he's like muscular, and this guy could literally, if he just punch you in your face, you're basically gonna be like, you're gonna be fainted, like, immediately. And this guy is it's just confusing, because he looks like he's biological man, and he talks like a man, and he acts like a man, and he was like going on rampage, and he was trying to make all of the scenes and stuff. And at the end, he's like, "I'm going to sue you. Sue you for what? You're a man. You're a biological man. How am I to know? Like, how can we identify that this guy is a woman? Like, you cannot. You can have woman makeup. You can wear woman, what do you call it, clothes. It could be one of your things. Like you're still a man, but you could just like doing that. But how do an individual basically know that you're a female or you're a male?" And that's part of the confusion that is going on. So this problem is being escalated now, or being addressed in sports. So how do we go from there? Like, how do we solve it? And yeah, so the conversation just keeps going on and on and on. That how can we get a solution where we can get people on a common ground, where in sports mainly, these people now can compete. Like, if you're a transgender, if you're a man, and you became a woman, like, where do you compete? Like, do you still compete in the men category, or do you like shift to the woman category, or should we create like a whole new segment where transgender people get to compete and stuff? So this is one of the things that I believe has just got out of control, like from the start. Like how did we came to the point where it started to be normal, or started to be okay for people to just identify themselves like gender wise? It's an absurd thing. This is the nature itself. It's basically it created what do you call it, this kind of system, or it systematically basically just organized the system to be only two genders, where one gender basically does a certain kind of task, and the other gender does a certain kind of task, for it to ensure the sustainability of certain species. So when someone comes and try to force an idea of anyone can be identified the way they feel like, it just creates a lot of confusion. So now, like, how do we address this? This is a problem that is literally now it's it's just keeps the conversation going. And I don't know basically where we're going from here, because you have the Olympics now. They're trying to resolve this. And I've been actually going through one. This is a scientific publication, basically published by this guy called J.C. Reeser. It's on gender identity and sports. Is the playing field level? I haven't gone through it. It's a long one. This should be interesting. Maybe we can get someone who's basically have an opinion, or having expertise on the subject, and they can basically just like enlighten us and give us some insights. Because again, like, if we're going back to the example of someone identifying themselves as the opposite sex, and trying to go and compete, like how do we do this? Like, for example, if you want like a example on the opposite side, because you could ask yourself, like, what does women good at when it comes to sports? I can tell you, for example, gymnastics. Women are flexible and they're basically more equipped to compete in gymnastics than men. So could it be one? I don't know if this happened or not. If not, man, I wish if it happens for women to go and compete in men's gymnastics. That would have been like super interesting thing to see. So yeah, so it's just a topic that I'd like to talk about, and definitely going to talk about more because. Again, this is just mainly an opinion, and not even an opinion. It's just a questioning. It's just a question mark. Where do we go from here? Like this topic is just very interesting to me, and it just needs to be addressed. Is it actually what do you call it correct? I'm going to go through several researches to just trying to understand, like how far can we go to say that this is actually correct, that someone can biologically man can be identified as a woman or can actually be a woman. So for me that's an ambiguity for now, but that's it. I think for today we're trying to keep it concise, so expect that this topic is going to be discussed further, hopefully with some people with more exposure to the topic. I just wanted to come back and go back on the route and go back and do this podcast again, and feeling very positive about it. And sorry for the for the look. I'm not shaved. I'm trying to do like a full month non-shaving and then perhaps go back and look clean. So thank you very much for watching. Looking forward for the comments actually, and looking forward for any individual who actually would like to have an opinion or would like to actually have a conversation about the topic or any other topic. Feel free to basically just invite yourself. I'm definitely going to be looking forward for that. So thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Peace.